Hello everyone, I'm Dan.
And I'm Raim, and today we will be giving a presentation on motion and forces. Let's get started.
The philosopher Aristotle categorized motion into two types, natural motion and unnatural motion. Natural motion is motion caused by some internal quality of an object that makes it a certain preferred position without any application of force. For example, heat rises and rocks fall. Unnatural motion means that thought requires applied force to be sustained. For example, throwing rocks upward. Also, there are two types of natural motion. The motion near the Earth, terrestrial motion, and the motion of planet, the celestial motion.
Now we'll take a look at an experiment. This experiment compares the time it takes for 4 objects of different masses to be dropped from the same height. There is a feather, a tennis ball, a baseball, and a bowling ball. Each object has 14 grams, 57 grams, 142 grams, and 6,804 gram masses. These 4 objects were dropped from a height of 30 meters. The lightest one, a feather, was dropped in 15 seconds, and a slightly heavier object, the tennis ball, was dropped faster than the feather, 3 seconds. And the baseball hit the ground in 2.8 seconds, and lastly, the heaviest material, the bowling ball, fell in 2.6 seconds.
From this chart, the bowling ball first fell on the ground, and the feather hit the ground last. So we can be curious why the heavier object falls faster than the lighter one. According to Aristotle, heavier objects seek their natural position near the center of the earth more vigorously than lighter objects. According to this logic, the speed of each object should be determined by its mass. However, even though the baseball has twice the mass of a tennis ball, its time is similar. Bowling ball is much heavier than a baseball. It's also similar to a baseball. If the object reaches a certain density, the heaviness of the object has little effect. Therefore, Aristotle is wrong.
Next, force. Force can be defined as pushes and pulls, which belong to the class of physical phenomena. Every object includes forces. Force has 2 types of factors, magnitudes and direction. These also can be called a vector. However, forces don't always cause a change in motion.
There are 2 types of forces, non-contact and contact forces. Let's talk about non-contact forces first. These forces are forces which can exert without physically touching each other. The field theory states that the surroundings, which are called the fields of a matter, interact with another matter's field. When force happens. For example, when you put 2 magnets close to each other, they either pull or push each other.
Now the other force is called contact forces, which are the exact opposite of non-contact forces. Exertion happens when 2 matters are pulled apart from each other or pulled together by force. Tension, torsion, friction, and shear forces are all contact forces. One example is the exertion that's caused when one pushes a box. Then how would we know if some matters need contact while others don't? Well, the answer to that question is by measuring. Now, several instruments can be used to measure forces, for example, a spring scale, load cell, pressure gauges, and so on.
Now let's talk about Newton's law of motion. There are the main principles of dynamics which Isaac Newton summarized. The first law that Newton wrote was that a system at rest would remain at rest and a moving system would continue to move at a continuous rate and velocity. If the system's external forces are balanced, then it would stay at rest, but if they aren't balanced, then they would continue to move.
Newton's second law of motion states that the acceleration of a system depends on how much force is acting on the system and the direction that the force is coming from. Newton's third law of motion is that if a certain system exerts a force on another, then the system that is receiving the force would release the same amount of force but in the opposite direction. An example would be, if I push the wall, then at the same time the wall is pushing me towards me.
Now let's take a look at weight and mass. Weight is the amount of force that is pulling on an object towards the center of the earth, or the amount of gravity on an object. Mass is the amount of matter which is in the object. Weight is usually measured by scales, while mass is measured by using a balance, which compares the mass of two objects.
That's it for today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.